Hello. I've often wondered why it is that the people who are closest to us seem to be able to hurt us the most. But over the years, I've realized it's because they're so important to us that we can get really upset from just a word or even a look. Then we overreact and say and do things that we later regret. And often we realize afterwards that it wasn't even what I thought it was. Hi, I'm Dr. Pamela Hansen, and this is the third in our series of 3 videos about why that happens and how we can learn to choose better responses so that we can have more peace and joy in our lives and our relationships. And in this video, we're going to talk about the part that says, it wasn't even what I thought it was. So just to summarize the first couple videos, we've been talking about the movie Lady Bird, where Lady Bird and her mother are driving back from a college road trip. And Lady Bird says, I hate California, I want to go east to school. Her mother totally overreacts, criticizes her, and in the middle of it, Lady Bird opens the door of the moving car and jumps out. And we talked about the hand model of the brain, where the arm is the spinal cord, this is the brainstem or lizard brain that takes care of basic automatic functions like finding food or mates and just surviving. Then on top of that, we have the emotional brain or squirrel brain that is responsible for maintaining the social relationships that mammals like squirrels or humans need in order to survive. And then on top of that, we have the human brain, particularly the prefrontal cortex behind the forehead, wrapping around the emotional system where it can get all the information, but also regulate the emotional system. And in the second video, we talked about a method to channel the information coming up from the lower levels in the emotional system so that the information is available to the human brain to inform decisions, but not be controlled by it. And to do that, we sit in our chairs with our feet flat on the floor. We localize the feeling in the body, and then we identify what category of feeling it is, whether anger, hurt, fear, or shame. And then we allow the emotion just to be and to flow, because emotions have motion and they will move on. And when that happens, then the emotional brain and the thinking brain are integrated and can make better choices and better decisions. Now in this video, we're going to talk about how the thinking brain can help regulate and modulate the emotional brain so that it's less likely to get out of control. Again, the part that we ask ourselves, it wasn't even what I thought it was, why did I overreact? And this material comes from the work of Dr. Albert Ellis, and it's called Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy or Training. And I will post a link to the website where you can get a copy of the self-help form that they use. And I will also post the slides that I'm going to use in this presentation. So REBT, Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy or Training. So R is for rational, meaning reasonable, helpful, or functional. Emotive refers to the fact that emotions are affected by how we think about events. Behavior, that refers to the fact that our behavior basically comes from the emotions that we feel and the decisions we make about them. And then therapy or training. This has been taught to children as young as 5. I've taught it to lay people at my church for decades, so it's not just for a therapy setting. Anyone can do this on their own. And there's a mnemonic to help us remember the steps. And A is for activating event, which can be external or internal. B is for our beliefs, both rational and irrational, about the activating event. C is for the consequences, both emotional and behavioral. And A, B, and C are called the diagnostic phase of this. Then D, E, and F. D is disputing, which is challenging beliefs that we've determined are irrational. E is effective ways to think, feel, and behave that get us the results that we want. And F is functional, healthy emotions and helpful behaviors that can help us set goals for how we want to think and behave. So today we're going to use a simplified version of the Albert Ellis chart. And it has a box for each letter, A, B, C, D, E, F. And in the A box, we want to write down as objectively as possible the activating event and also the most disturbing aspect of it. And then under C, we want to put what the emotions were and what the behavior was. And the arrows here show our usual way of thinking. We tend to think that the activating event leads directly to the consequences in our behavior and our emotions. But in fact, A does not go directly to C in the alphabet. A goes to B, and then B goes to C. And so that's what this chart shows, that the activating event actually leads to certain thoughts and beliefs that we have, and it's those thoughts and beliefs that lead to the emotions, which then lead to the behavior. So in the next step of this process, we take the most disturbing aspect and we move it down into the belief section so that we can think clearly about what's going on. Now, in the case of Lady Bird and her mother, the activating event was Lady Bird said, "I hate California, I want to go east to college." And the most disturbing aspect, I'm conjecturing, is that Lady Bird's mother felt criticized. So we move that down here. She's criticizing me. And another belief that we often have is that I can't stand it. So I put that in as well. So if Lady Bird's mother was thinking, she's criticizing me and I can't stand it, then her emotions of anger, guilt, and others perhaps are natural, and we can understand then with those emotions why she behaved the way that she did. So that's the diagnostic phase in understanding what happened. And the next phase is the disputation phase, to try to examine the beliefs and see if they're actually getting us to where we want to go. So in that phase, we start actually with F, because we want to set goals. We want to have thoughts and feelings and behaviors that are life-giving and lead to adaptive behavior. So first of all, Lady Bird's mother would want to identify some more reasonable emotions or more functional emotions. Not that she's going to feel good necessarily, but maybe less angry, less reactive. So we could say that maybe she would want to feel maybe some concern or even just some disappointment. And then rather than going off on an angry rant, perhaps she could choose some different behavior goals, like clarifying what Lady Bird was saying or calmly expressing her own thoughts and feelings. So having some goals in mind, now we can figure out a way to get there. So we go back to disputation, which is questioning the thoughts and beliefs that we have over under B. So believing that Lady Bird was criticizing her, she could ask herself, well, is that really true? She could say, well, I'm not a mind reader. I can't be sure what she's trying to say unless I clarify it. Or she could ask herself, is it really true that I can't stand criticism? And in fact, obviously she can stand criticism because she's still around. So then she can ask herself, well, what would be some more effective thoughts that I could have about this situation that would be more likely to get me to my goals of how I want to feel and to behave? So she could come up with a thought such as, well, she seems critical, but I may be misinterpreting her words. Or as far as criticism, she could say, I don't like criticism, but I can stand it, and it doesn't have to ruin my life. So if she did that, we can go back and see what the likely result would be. So Lady Bird says, I hate California. So now if she would have a belief, wow, she seems critical, but I may be misinterpreting her words, or I don't like criticism, but actually I can stand it, then that would produce some emotions, perhaps concern or disappointment, but not be so likely to lead to an angry rant and Lady Bird jumping out of the car. And so she could choose some different behavior. If she wanted to clarify what Lady Bird was saying, she could ask, so it sounds like you're really fed up with California? Or if she wanted to express her own thoughts and feelings about the interaction, she could say, you know, when I hear that, I'm thinking you're criticizing me and I feel kind of upset about that. And of course, both of those need to be said in a tone of voice that's neutral because, as we know, a tone of voice can actually set off another cycle of emotion and bad behavior. So to summarize, in this method, we identify the activating event, the feelings and behaviors that resulted. We also identify the most disturbing aspect and move that down into the beliefs column and identify the beliefs that were actually producing the emotions, which then produce the behavior. We set goals under F as to ways of feeling and behaving that are more likely to be productive. Then we look back at the beliefs and see if they're accurate and realistic in the D, or disputation phase. Then we identify some beliefs that would actually result in the feelings and behavior that we're aiming for. So that brings the emotional and the thinking brain back together so that they can take the information about emotion, but choose a response that's going to actually lead to more peace and joy in our lives and relationships. And we won't be in that situation of overreacting and afterwards realizing it wasn't even what I thought it was. So don't forget to pause and notice when emotions start coming up so we don't flip our lids. We can use the map of emotions to identify and locate the feelings in the body, allow them to flow so that the thinking and the feeling brains can be integrated and make good decisions. And we can use the technique of rational emotive behavioral training to prevent our thoughts from inflaming our emotions and making things worse. Thanks so much for watching.